Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friday, Furahi Day, as they would say in Swahili. Well, Sheng, maybe, this mix of Swahili and English. Furahi means kind of like joy, I think. Joy or so. Yeah, I think joy. Um, yeah, so Joy Day. Anyways, I want to talk to you today about a few things, mainly this concept about stories, myths, narratives, these things that we tell all the time, and sometimes we can become really attached to them. So last night I was listening to the final night of the Republican National Convention and was listening to the stories that they were telling about what's currently going on in the world and what may happen in the future. And then after that, I listened to a couple of the news channels, CNN, also The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and also James Corden, and listened to some of the stories they were telling and the questions they had for their guests and the stories that their guests were telling. And gosh, as the author Yuval Noah Harari states, it seems that almost everything we tell is a story, that we have these myths that we believe and that we hold very close to us. And these myths and stories stack on top of each other, and they integrate with each other to create larger stories and deeper narratives and and very complex webs of these different interlinked stories that we believe. So, for example, one of the stories that I heard coming out of the Republican National Convention is basically this: that Donald Trump is there to help protect America, and it's not going as well as it could right now. He's trying to make America great again. It's not going as well as he could because there are people who are sabotaging him, who are either in the mainstream media or the quote unquote radical left, technique they kept saying over and over again to brand that group as a certain type of protagonist in the story, and or antagonist rather, and other people within the federal government are sabotaging his efforts to make America great again. And if he is not there, it would be so much worse right now. And if he is not there in the future, this country will disappear and people will have their houses burned and looted and people will be raped and killed, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, that's an exaggeration maybe of the story, but I think the underlying story is that Trump is trying to make America great again. People are sabotaging him right now. If he weren't there, it would be much worse. And if he's not reelected, it's going to be much, much, much worse. And that's why people should reelect Donald Trump. That's the story I hear. And so then after the convention, when some of the analysts were asking questions to other Republicans and saying, okay, so he's talking about law and order, but there doesn't seem to be law and order right now under his watch. Again, when people try to say, if you come at the original story from that perspective, it fits right into the narrative. The narrative is that it's not working right now. We don't have as much law and order as we would want because other people are sabotaging it. He is trying his best, but other people are sabotaging it, and that's why it's not working. So when people say, well, it's under his watch, I say, yeah, but he's doing the best that he can. And it would be so much worse if he weren't there. And then people just fight back and forth because a counter narrative is that Donald Trump is ignoring and eroding many of the laws that we have in the country. And if he is reelected, then he will continue to erode the enforcement of the laws and break the laws and without facing penalty or punishment. And our country is nothing but a country of laws. And if we don't have the Constitution and these laws enforced, then our country will fall apart. So other people think that Donald and not just fall apart, but people will die, and this will get horrible. This will get really horrible. So almost both sides are telling this apocalyptic story that whoever gets elected, if it's the other person, the country will fall apart. We will either lose our democracy or we will lose our law and order. And typically they're both saying the same thing, but they just think that the other person is the antagonist, whereas their person is the hero. And almost no fact can come in and really change those perspectives. You come in and, like, if that's the overarching story and you come in and say, well, for example, against the Trump as hero story, you come in and say that 180,000 people are dead because of the COVID crisis, the pandemic. They say, yeah, and Trump wanted to do more, but people wouldn't let him do it. He wanted to put out these, he's trying to rush these vaccines. He's trying to get these treatments out there. He's trying to open up businesses. People are dying because of COVID. They're also dying because of suicide and despair. And they're not 100% wrong. There's, and people on the other side say, no, Trump, 180,000 people are dead because Trump doesn't know how to manage large coordinated effort. And he was sabotaging by not having tests. He didn't get rapid tests out there. He sabotaged the efforts of so many by not social distancing at his events and not asking people to wear masks, by him not wearing a mask himself, and many things like this. And it just seems like two sides are just bashing their heads together over these competing narratives and aren't trying to come up with a collective narrative, maybe. It goes deeper. It seems, I was reading something on Twitter the other day about how some of these narratives, like this narrative of people of color in the U.S. are going to be co-opted by the communists and drive communism in the U.S., communism, socialism, and we're going to basically turn into a communist nation. Apparently has been a similar story since the early 1900s, right after World War I. And it just keeps coming back up. And I don't know what people can say to change other people's perspective on that story, It seems like right now we're getting to a point where some people in the U.S. believe that if Trump is elected, this country is going to turn into Nazi Germany. And other people believe that if Biden is elected, this country is going to turn into either communist Soviet Union or more so communist China, because people right now have a deep fear of China, and that plays into other stories. So it's like, I don't know. I personally don't believe either story. I don't think if Trump gets elected, we're going to turn into Nazi Germany. I also don't believe that if Biden gets elected, we're going to turn into communist China. I don't believe that we can go much deeper, and just the concept of communism is a story, and the concept of China is a story, and the concept of socialism is a story, and the concept of capitalism is a story. The concept of America is a story. As Yuval Noah Harari points out over and over again, these are all myths and narratives and stories that we believe. And they, stories can be really powerful. They can really help us, but they can also really hurt us. And sometimes we can get really attached to these stories and not see the reality of what's going on, or recognize, recognize maybe some universal laws or things that aren't like physical laws, things that don't rely on human stories, that are almost outside of human stories. But I just, I was thinking about it as I was watching Trump speak last night, and he reminded me of the story of the fisherman who goes out and catches a fish, and the fish was like maybe 3-4 inches long, which is about 10 centimeters or so. And when he comes back and he tells a story, he tells a story of, oh, I caught this fish. You will never believe the size of this thing. This is the biggest fish I have ever seen. I went the whole morning. I didn't get a single nibble. And then boom, I caught this behemoth. It was as wide as I can stretch my arms. You would never believe that I caught a fish like this. Oh man, it was one of the best days of my life. He caught a fish that was only 10 centimeters big, and he's now telling a story as if the fish were like a meter long, or 3 feet long. No. But for that person telling the story, they care much more about the story than they do about the quote unquote facts, or the data, the details of the story. Embellish the details, because what matters is the overarching narrative, or the underlying narrative of the story. That's what matters, not the nitty, not nitpicking on the details. And so watching Trump, I hear this over and over again. Oh, the world's greatest this was the largest this is the strongest this, I am the one who has done the most since Lincoln, all of these hyperbolic terms to exaggerate and bend the data, or the details of the story, to make it a much more compelling and exciting story to listen to. And a lot of people eat that stuff up. A lot of people love that stuff. Or they say, I know he's embellishing, but it doesn't matter if he's embellishing, because the story is the same. Yeah, he's missing a little bit of details here, but the overarching story is the same thing, and that's what really matters. Because if the Democrats do get elected, this country is going to just devolve into anarchy and chaos immediately. You're like, what? Really? Immediately? Really? And then I think a lot of people on the left currently, and or like in the Democratic Party, I'm sure it's ebbed and flowed throughout the years, but a lot of their arguments are very scientific or factual based, or at least, oh, well, Trump said this was the largest gathering ever, the largest inauguration ever. But if you look at the photos and you count the number of people, it is 1/3 the size of what Obama had, or something like that. But for those people, it doesn't really matter whether it was small or big. It's the feeling that it was big, that this is momentous because this is a huge occasion. And if it were small, again, it was because these other antagonists on the outside were making it small. So it wasn't actually that small, but the people are portraying it as being small. They're trying to hurt us with their narrative. They don't care about us. They don't. And so there's just so many stories that we tell over and over again, and that we embed so deeply in our lives. And they have a huge impact. It's kind of like what I was talking about the other day with, do I choose to believe the story that people hate me, or the story that people don't care about me, or the story that people love me? What story do I choose to believe? Which story am I attached to? Am I attached to the story that that person broke up with me because they wanted to ruin my life, or because they didn't like me at all? Or can I complicate the story a little bit and see some competing stories and think, oh, maybe they liked me too much and that's why they left. They were scared. They didn't know what to do. They didn't want to get too attached. Or maybe they were really confused about what was going on in their life because they had trouble with work, and they had trouble with family, and they had trouble with, who knows, personal identity. And many of these things caused it to happen. I think when we latch onto a story too strongly, we can really, really hurt ourselves sometimes. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there right now. I'm sure some of you listening are having stories run through your mind about why you lost your job, or what's going to happen in the next couple months, or what's happening in your current relationship, or why you don't have so much money, or why you do have so much money, or why you did get that job, or what people want from you, or what people don't want from you. We all have stories. We all have stories based on the stories that our parents told us, the stories that we read, the stories that we formulated on our own as we were going through life, the stories that our friends relayed to us in times of crisis, and so they really stuck with us. You know, the stories of, hey, don't trust anyone because they'll just screw you over, because I got screwed over. And then, oh, okay, I shouldn't trust people, or don't trust this specific group of people, because they may pretend like they're really helping you, but they're really going to hurt you. The whole story that's going around right now, the whole wolves in sheep's clothing, which may even be a story from the Bible originally. But just these different stories about different people and their motivations, their intentions, their actions, their reasons, their feelings, their thoughts, their consequences, their histories, their futures, our futures. All of this stuff is pretty much stories that we tell ourselves. You know, in a way, pulling back from it, it seems quite, I don't know, makes me laugh. It makes me take life a little less seriously in some ways. Just that we're all holding on so dearly. There's so many of us are holding on so dearly to these stories. These stories are so, communism is bad, fascism is bad, money is good, having a job is good, not having a job is good, being a freelancer is good, getting married is good, being single is good, having kids is good, having multiple kids is good, having one kid is good, sending people to prison is good, forgiving people is good, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these stories. I mean, those are some of the basic and maybe competing stories, but the thing with the stories is that they do have powerful impacts on people. If I'm trying to grow a business and I believe that people, if I believe the story that people don't want to give me money, or the story that people don't like to spend money, that they're very hesitant to give money and they just want to hold on to it, then I may be very hesitant to charge money for the services that I deliver, because I don't want to hurt people. Because if they give money and giving money means that it's really going to hurt them, then I don't want to force them to go through that pain. But that's just a story I made up, right? That's one of multiple stories. Another story is that people love to give money, that people feel great when they give money. They feel really excited. Another story is that people hate having money, so they don't want to hold on to money at all. Like, holding on to money makes them feel stressed out and responsible, and they get it and they just want to get rid of it as fast as they can. Another story is that people, when they receive something they really appreciate, want to give back immediately. And if they don't give back immediately, they feel really bad. So they don't like it being left in the balance, or like they don't want to be indebted to anyone. So they want to cancel the debt as much as they can to do a fair exchange at the moment. Another story is that money is just a story. Money is just this thing. It's not this all-powerful thing that controls our lives. Another story is that money is one of the most powerful tools we have on the planet to do things. So many stories, but I know I can get stuck on one story. This is why something happened. This is why or how something will happen. This is what will happen if I do this. I know for 100% certainty this is going to happen if I do this, because this is how the world works. Yeah, that might work with like tossing an apple up in the air and seeing it fall. But and that only works on Earth. You know, if you're on the moon, it might go pretty far up, and if you're out in space, it'll just keep going. But this idea that I know with 100% certainty the story and how it's going to play out, it's just not true. It's just not true. Gosh, but we can get so stuck and so certain, feel so confident over the stories that we say. And then when someone comes in to try to say a different story, we don't hear it. We defend the story that we believe. Oh, no, this is the story. And we try to fit those pieces into the story. You know, I say it to myself when I can remember, but, you know, I think a lot of times I get to the point where I say, I don't know something, but then I'm like, I don't know, and I need to know. I need to know what the story is. I need to know what's going on. I need to know why. I need to know how. I need to know what. But then I start to go crazy, because once I figure it out, then if other things come in and conflict with that, then I need to know this is why, this is how, this is what, and I need to know. But if I just let myself go, I don't know, and I don't need to know the story. I don't need to know. I just relax. I don't need to know whether people want to give me money or not. I don't need to know what's going to happen when either person is elected as president. I don't need to know why certain people join extremist organizations. I don't need to know why that person won't return my call. I don't need to know why that person committed violence against me, or I think they committed violence against me, right? It's perception. Even violence is, like, you argue that's a story as well. The story that the person is hurting me and trying to hurt me, versus the story that the person was just bumbling down the sidewalk and tripped and fell and they don't know what they were doing. Yeah, they were distracted, they were confused, they were stressed out because of the day. I think one of the tools that has helped me the most, again, another story, is trying to complicate the story. And this happens a lot in, I would say, situations where I feel attacked, or like emotional attacks and stuff. So if I get into a situation, I ask for something or I apply to something and they reject me, and I feel rejected. That story, I'm telling a story that I applied and I thought I was worthy, and then they said I was not worthy, and they don't care about me and they don't like me. That's the story I say when I say I feel rejected. But to complicate that story, one thing I do is I delve into the emotions, or the emotions I imagine of the other person. I start telling almost like empathetic fiction, I call it, where, okay, how was that person feeling when they received the application? Maybe they were feeling stressed because they got 1,000 applications and they're only giving out 5 winners. Okay. Maybe they were feeling really distracted because their kid just got sick and they're a new parent and they don't really know how to deal with this yet. Maybe they actually read my application and really liked it, like really excited. But then they sent it to their boss, and their boss said no. And so they were feeling really sad that they couldn't give the position or the scholarship or whatever to me. Maybe they were feeling really confused when they read the thing, because for some reason it's just not within the scope of the things that they've learned. Maybe I was talking about a foreign language or something. Maybe I was talking about Swahili and they don't know anything about Swahili. And so it was hard for them to comprehend what was going on. Who knows, you know? And when I do this, when I start to complicate that story, especially about the other person, I feel so much more relaxed, because at the end of the day, I don't know why they're doing things. Why did the person cut me off in traffic? Oh, he cut me off in traffic because he's an idiot and he doesn't care about me. Huh? or he was reaching down to get his French fries that fell, or his wife is pregnant in the hospital and the doctor just called and said something urgent and it's an emergency, or he was really stressed out at work, or he is really late for meeting with his kids, has to pick his kids up from school, and he's done that multiple times, and this is the last time, and if he doesn't pick him up on time, then the wife had threatened to divorce him. Who knows? And it doesn't even have to be right. I know that when I start, a lot of times when I cycle through these different stories, I just feel more relaxed. I don't know what's going on with that person. I have no idea. It's okay. I don't need to know what their story is. I say this because I think so many of us are getting very attached to stories in the political space and stories in our own lives, that we feel 100% confident that this is the story, and we don't open ourselves to imagining the other stories that might be possible at the same time. When somebody tells me this is absolutely certainly the thing that is happening, I go, really? Absolutely certainly, the completely 100%, this is the thing that's happening? This person doesn't care about me at all. Doesn't care about you at all? Really? This happened to me once. I got into a discussion. It was word, I got into a discussion in a relationship. I was dating this girl, and I went to go see an ex-girlfriend for lunch. I think I may have told this story. I do that sometimes. But I told her I was going to go see this ex-girlfriend. And she says, you don't care about me at all. I said, at all? I don't care about you at all. I can tell you don't care about me at all. You just want her. You just want to say, I just spent the last week with you. Oh, you don't care about me at all. You just want to go see her and this and that. I said, what? It confused me so much that she could be so certain, 100% certain that this is what I want and this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing it. Really? I'm not even 100% certain on why I'm doing this stuff. Are you 100%? Because I feel a lot of internal conflict. I don't know about you, but I feel a lot of internal conflict on a lot of things. So this idea that we assume other people have 100% clarity on what they're doing is, I find, quite ludicrous in many cases. Like, I was reading something about story, and they were talking about the different types of conflict in story: the man versus man, man versus self, man versus other, man versus nature, man versus. And they said many of those external conflicts, man versus man versus nature, man versus society, they provide energy to the story and they help the story move along. But they said without man versus self, without internal conflict, stories are boring. They lack depth. And most of the time we want to watch these stories that have, and many of us want to watch these stories that have more internal depth to them. I was reading something lately talking about the movie series Batman, and the person was saying that they hope that Batman returns to be more of the noir genre. Or noir means black in French, but I believe, or maybe night. No, nuit is night. The noir is like black, and so like a darker look. And he said one of the things that the author really appreciated about Batman in the past is that Batman wasn't like many of the other superheroes. Batman was human. Batman had internal struggle. Batman was dark. Batman wasn't this superhero that could be thrown across the universe and not be physically impacted. Batman got hurt, and we could see it, and we could see him struggling between the light and the dark. And maybe that's one of the appeals in Star Wars as well, where the protagonist, the quote-unquote hero, is struggling between the light and the dark side, or the good and evil struggle. and we can see it. But it's not just the hero that's struggling, it's also the enemy or the antagonist who is struggling between the light and the dark side. This internal conflict of what should I do? How am I feeling? And what does this all mean? I think we can get so quick to assume other people aren't having this internal conflict, that there aren't multiple stories competing in their head at the same time for attention and for love and for respect. Oh my gosh. So as much as we can get attached to stories, sometimes the problem is we get attached to many different stories and the stories don't work with each other, and we try to harmonize these stories in our head, but they don't harmonize, and so we can get really conflicted. For example, me. I'm 35 years old right now. I'm at my parents' house. I can tell the one story of I'm 35, I'm at home with my parents, I'm a failure. But then inside me, there's the other story of I've run workshops in East Africa, Europe, and the US, helping people deal with deep emotional conflict. And it's worked in multiple languages. So I have the story of like, I'm a failure and like, I'm doing some really powerful work and helping a lot of people. Then I also have the story of, I've been home during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, I've been lazy, I've been unproductive, I haven't really done anything. What's wrong with me? And I'm such a failure, etc. I have the other story of, in 35 days, I wrote 3 times a day for 10 minutes each time, did it live, and am compiling it all into a book. I wrote 105 essays. Each essay was like 400 to 600 words, which means like 40 to 60 words per minute typing and thinking and composing. I'm not that lazy and unproductive. I also started this podcast show where I've done 10 episodes so far, and almost 30 minutes to an hour each day. Last 2 weeks. So it's just like these competing narratives of that so many of us have in our heads about ourselves and about other people and about the world in general. And the conflict that we experience, but then assume that other people don't experience conflict. It reminds me of what somebody said once. They said, it's like we see the whole experience for ourselves and we only see other people's highlight reels. We assume that these people are so coordinated, these people are so aligned and coherent, and no, they're not. They're just, that's all we see. That's all we look at. That's all we don't recognize the inconsistencies, or if we do, we don't realize that we're just as inconsistent. That's interesting, that we can be 100% confident on somebody else's intentions and goals and stuff like this, but then we can also and think that we're kind of a mess, and then think that other people are incredibly hypocritical, and yet that we're not. That we're totally aligned. I find it fascinating how we can see the world in such different ways depending on what's going on during that day and that time. I think at that point I'm going to wrap up. It's been about 36 minutes. I find this a fascinating exercise. I'm sitting here talking into the void right now because I haven't invited people. Inviting people is a certain story in itself. Oh, people don't want to participate. Oh, if people join, then maybe I won't be able to handle it. Oh, I don't want this getting too big. But then having the competing thing of, I want to invite people because I think people want to hear this. Oh, I think people would love this stuff, or some of them will. And the other narrative of, I do want this to get out there because I want people to be exposed to different stories. And I think some of the stories that I tell might help some people. Man, so much conflict in this life. Should I shave? Should I keep my hair? Okay, I'll probably shave. Anyways, y'all, it's been a pleasure. I hope to next week invite people into the live conversations to test it out. Big challenge with this is, part of it's learning. I really just want to learn stuff. See what happens, you know? Vamos a ver, which means we will see in Spanish. And talk to y'all soon. Be well.